So, work is good, even if we are working in a context that is corrupted or a community that is divided. Work is still good. And we can show off God as we work, we can display His image through our work. But what happens when we can't work? When either we can't accomplish the good things that we want to do through our work, or at some point something has changed about us, about our situation, that we actually can't work. What does that mean when we can't do good through our work, or we can't work at all? Now, staying with the Genesis 3 passage, we can read some of this in Genesis 3:17 and 19. And he said to Adam, because you listened to your wife's voice and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, do not eat from it. The ground is cursed because of you. You will eat from it by means of painful labor all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you. You will eat plants of the field. You will eat bread by the sweat of your brow until you return to the ground, since you were taken from it, for you are dust, and you will return to dust. If work is so good, then what happens when we fail to accomplish our work? When we do not succeed, how does it feel? When we do not complete the tasks we set out to complete, what is your reaction? Failure feels wrong. Failure feels worse than wrong. Failure almost feels an evil. The opposite of good work is not what we talked about last week, as in rest. The opposite of good work is failure. God commanded and created us to take care of His creation. This is what we are supposed to do. However, our ability to complete this task was predicated on our continued connection with God. It was assumed as part of the design that God would equip us with the power to accomplish the assigned task. We would know what to do and how to do it because we would be in communication with the Creator. It was our responsibility, but with divine and direct divine assistance. But when sin entered the world through Adam, our connection with God was severed. We lost our line of communication. We still had the task of caring for the world, and the world still needs our care. However, we are no longer connected. We no longer have the power to get it done well, to know what to do, or to see what needs to be done. We have a job that is ultimately good, and we are not equipped to complete it. That is evil. That feels absolutely wrong. This leads to frustration. Frustration can produce several responses. We can give up and quit. The task is hopeless, so why even try? We can try harder and harder, exhausting every possible resource we have at our disposal. This will lead to a very unbalanced life and an extreme lack of rest and lack of trust. We can challenge ourselves to get better, to develop our skills, to become more proficient at our tasks. Our frustration can also push us back into relationship with the Almighty. Reconnecting with the Creator allows us to start redeveloping the abilities we were supposed to have in the beginning. It allows us to start reconnecting with our power source to successfully complete tasks assigned. Overcoming frustration now becomes something that you and God can work on together. And at the very end of this series, we'll talk about the effects prayer can have on our lives. But sometimes evil has so affected our lives that work is no longer possible. When I originally wrote this series, a pandemic induced quarantine was the farthest thing from my mind. But so many of us are out of work right now due to some virus that is completely out of our control. Sometimes due to economic conditions, work is not available. Sometimes due to health, illness, or energy, work is not possible. What happens if I can't work? Does that make me less like God? Does that make me less than fully human? How do I deal with the feelings of inadequacy? As we look at John 19, 1 through 12, let's concentrate on verse 3, John 9, 3. As he was passing by, he saw a blind man from birth. His disciples questioned, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, Jesus answered. This came about so that God's work might be displayed in him. First and foremost, there are times when our inability to work is not directly connected to any fault or sin of our own. We are now in one of those times. We are unable to work solely because the circumstances were engineered. And if we are completely honest, the circumstances are somehow engineered by God so as to prevent our working. Even if it is a direct result of an action we made, there is still the thought of God allowing us to face the consequences in a way that prevents our working. So it can be rendered true that although God has created humanity to work, he sometimes engineers circumstances so that at this moment or others in this time, you are not able to work. God must be okay with that. So therefore, you should be as well. I know that knowing something is God's will and feeling good about being God's will are two different things, but at least we can be working toward that point. Second, if we look at 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10, especially verse 9, and I'll read verse 9. 2 Corinthians 12, 9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may reside in me. We see a God that can do special things through a person's weaknesses, imperfections, vulnerabilities. Look for opportunities to experience God through your inability to work that you never could have when you were employed. I do not want to be flippant here. I do not want to easily glaze over this point. I do not want to offer some pop Christian psychobabbler saying, buck up, beaver. Golly gee, things will be better if you just look at the bright side. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in every single one of our deepest hurts, every single one of our pains, when we are so vulnerable that we do not know where our next meal is coming from, when God has placed us in a situation that we are unable to provide for ourselves, he is there too. He is with us. He knows our suffering and in some way understands our pain. He has decided to place you in this situation, and he has your best interest in mind. Maybe not your momentary comfort, but your eternal peace. God is not shocked by your circumstances. You are not outside of his reach. As we think about theologians talking about the image of God in us, they have divided three categories. The image of God in us can be something substantial within us, like our ability to reason. We can reason like God reasons. It's some innate ability that makes us human and allows us to be human in a way that displays the image of God. The other one, the middle one, is our functionality and our work. We can look like God and we can display the image of God in our work. And the third one is in our community. We can look like God, who is a Trinity, as we relate to one another. Sometimes we aren't able to do one of those. Sometimes we are alone. Sometimes we aren't able to work. Sometimes we are damaged in some way that one of those things innate in us that looks like God is not functioning. But we are in the image of God in those three ways, no matter what is taken away from us. We can still be fully human, created in the image of God, even when we are unable to work.